Commander Mike Hadley hated the coffee on the Formidable. It wasn't bad exactly, it was just wrong. Synthetic bean analog, replicated from a scan of a long-extinct strain that some Earth bureaucrat had insisted was culturally authentic. The result tasted like hot dirt filtered through a sock and politely called a morale booster. He took another sip anyway, because it was either that or scream. Outside the reinforced glass of the command deck, the black of space glimmered with too many ships. Dozens of alien war vessels, sleek, blade-shaped hulls and grotesque spherical monstrosities, all hovering just beyond the line of legality. The Taro hegemony, brutal, expansionist, the kind of species who thought diplomacy was what you did with orbital cannons. Hadley narrowed his eyes. "They're staging for war," he said flatly. His XO, Lieutenant Arya Nayem, flicked her gaze up from the console. "No declaration?" "Not yet," she exhaled. "Cowards. Still pretending it's a patrol action." "Let 'em pretend," Hadley muttered, cradling his mug. "We're not here to believe them. We're here to be ready." The Formidable was old school by Galactic Alliance standards. Not the biggest, not the fastest, but built with human priorities in mind. That meant it was ugly, over-engineered, and could take a kinetic barrage to the teeth while still broadcasting show tunes from the mess hall. Hadley loved her, especially now, with tensions rising and all those aliens out there still thinking humans were cute when angry. "Intel says they'll make landfall on Elysium 4, Nayem reported. Hadley nodded. Elysium, the jungle moon, thick canopy, dense atmosphere, ground sensors worthless, perfect for an operation, or an ambush. "Prep the ghosts," he said. Nayem blinked. "The entire squad?" "If the Taro want to test limits," Hadley replied, finishing his coffee with a grimace, "let's give 'em the class in consequences." The Ghosts of 6 Echo were more myth than unit. Officially, they were a forward reconnaissance and adaptive response team. Unofficially, the kind of humans you deployed when the Galactic Council's rules of engagement got laughed at. Because when other species saw conflict as posturing, humans did logistics. When aliens practiced ritual duels, humans ran night raids. When enemies quoted warrior codes, humans carried bolt cutters and said, "Screw the code." 3 hours later, Hadley was knee-deep in the steaming underbrush of Elysium 4. His armor was matte black, scratched from old campaigns, and painted with a streak of red across the shoulder, because sometimes psychological warfare was as simple as reminding the enemy you bled and kept going. The ghosts moved in formation, 10 figures, silent as breath, even as the jungle howled around them. Up front was Sergeant Clay, a walking brick of muscle and paranoia, scanning the terrain with infrared lenses. Behind him, Corporal Yelani checked motion detectors, while Staff Sergeant Finch silently cursed every flying bug Elysium had to offer. Normal day, normal death jungle. "Contact," Clay whispered over comms. "Eyes?" "South Ridge, 8 of them. Taro, patrol formation." Hadley frowned. He tapped his helmet to zoom his HUD. Sure enough, tall reddish figures with triple-kneed legs and segmented armor moved through the trees. Their weapons were ceremonial, plasma glaives, powered spears, even a gauntlet that looked more for crushing than aiming. Primitive? Number brutal. Very. "They're hunting," Yelani said softly. "How do you know?" asked Finch. Yelani zoomed in on one of the Taro warriors marking a tree with a claw. Blood, not their own. "That's how the Taro claim territory. That one just pissed on our lawn." Hadley grunted. "Time to mow it." He didn't bark orders, didn't shout. The ghosts fanned out like smoke, sliding through the trees in complete silence. Not a snapped branch, not a disturbed vine. The jungle belonged to them now. From above, you'd never see it. You'd think the humans were prey, outnumbered, soft-skinned mammals clinging to weapons like children with toys. The Taro made that mistake too, right before Finch dropped from a tree and planted a combat knife into the back of the squad leader's neck. The jungle exploded into chaos. 3 ghosts hit the ridge from the left, sending plasma charges through the foliage. Clay vaulted forward, grabbed one Taro by the throat, and yanked him off his feet like a toy. Yelani used an old trick, dirt and static to blind their optics. Then a low sweep to the knees. Hadley stepped into the fray last, calm as ever, his pulse rifle already cycling. He didn't fire immediately, he just walked. One Taro warrior, bigger than the others, roared a challenge and charged him directly, glaive raised. Hadley sidestepped, grabbed the shaft mid-swing, twisted, and broke the Taro's wrist. "Stop fighting the rules," Hadley said coldly. "Start learning them." The battle ended in 97 seconds. 8 Taro, down, 2 dead, 6 incapacitated. The ghosts? Barely scuffed. As the jungle settled, Hadley stood over one of the surviving warriors. The Taro coughed, blood bubbling from his mouth. "Cowards. Ambushed." Hadley crouched. "We followed your rules," he said calmly. "We entered your claimed space. You saw us as a threat. You attacked." He leaned in closer. "That's your system." Then he smiled. "Let me explain ours." He pulled a tag from his belt, a compact beacon, set it on the fallen warrior's chest. "It's called a med patch. You'll live." The Taro blinked, confused. "But next time," Hadley stood. "We won't be explaining. We'll be demonstrating." The ghosts faded into the jungle once more, vanishing as silently as they'd come. Behind them, the message remained, carved into a tree with a combat knife. "Next time, ask first." Galactic military doctrine had a saying, "If you can't win the battle, escalate the paperwork," which explained why, 36 hours after the Elysium incident, the Unified War Tribunal was summoned for an emergency conflict standards review. Translation: the Taro were pissed, and they wanted to yell at humans in a room full of rules. Commander Hadley hated rooms like that. The council chamber looked like someone had asked a committee of bureaucrats, lawyers, and interior decorators who all hated each other to agree on one color scheme, sterile gray. Seated at a long obsidian table were 32 representatives of galactic military forces. Some were cybernetic, some amorphous. One was literally a floating sack of spores held together by anxiety and spite. At the far end stood the Taro delegation, rigid and glowering, clad in ceremonial battle armor polished so aggressively it reflected trauma. Hadley entered last. No medals, no pomp, just his fatigues, a data pad, and the quiet confidence of a man who already knew how this ended. Ambassador Vrelik of the Taro stood. "This hearing concerns a blatant breach of Article 9, subsection C of the Intergalactic Rules of Engagement," he declared, mandibles clicking with precision. "Humans are accused of utilizing unregistered tactics, environmental manipulation, and psychological warfare against a recognized patrol unit." Hadley didn't blink. "That's called infantry." The Taro ambassador's frills twitched. "You booby-trapped the terrain." "No," Hadley said calmly. "We used it." "You didn't engage in honorable combat." Hadley tilted his head. "We're not here to impress your ancestors." He pulled up a holo recording from the bodycam footage. The fight played in brutal detail. Taro warriors overwhelmed in seconds. Human soldiers moving like smoke and hammer, efficient and remorseless. No glory, just results. A crystalline strategist, 2 seats down, leaned forward. "Commander Hadley, may I ask, your team's methods deviate significantly from accepted interstellar doctrine. Your tactics are improvised, brutal." Hadley gave a one-shoulder shrug. "That's because your doctrine assumes war is fair." A ripple of discomfort passed through the chamber. The gelatinous ambassador from the Velari blinked, their skin rippling nervously. "But surely there are limits." "There are," Hadley agreed. "We just don't wait to write them down before acting." He leaned forward, voice like flint. "You think our rules are soft because they come with explanations. But we write them in blood, same as everyone else. We just remember the cost." The Taro ambassador jabbed a claw. "You mean to say your unit operates without honor?" "No," Hadley replied. "We operate without ego." Silence, the kind that drops when the air gets too heavy. "You see," Hadley continued, "the ghosts aren't out there to make statements. We're there to stop wars before you start measuring glory." He tapped his datapad. "Your patrol was armed, marked territory, engaged without communication. That's textbook hostile behavior." A new hologram flickered to life. Taro soldiers painting trees in blood. "You call this ritual? We call it escalation." A Zelvari general coughed politely, her neck plates rattling. "Commander Hadley, if I may, the concern among some of us is unpredictability." "That's fair," she blinked. "You're agreeing?" "Absolutely. We're unpredictable. That's why we're alive." Another delegate, a fog-like being from the Triscari Ascendancy, rumbled through a voice box translator. "What's your doctrine called?" Hadley smiled. "Situational dominance." "Please elaborate." "Adapt to the problem. Break the expectation. End the fight before the enemy even knows it started." The room rustled like wind through bureaucracy. The Taro ambassador snarled. "That's not warfare, that's terrorism." Hadley's face hardened. "Number terrorism targets the weak. We take aim at those who should know better." At that moment, a high-ranking war analyst from the Orin Collective, who'd spent years dismissing human combat doctrine as barbaric, spoke up. "Commander, is it true your unit trains with no single standardized engagement manual?" Hadley smirked. "Correct." "Then what do they train?" "Everything that works." The Valari delegate leaned over. "Is this scalable?" Hadley paused. "Yes, but I hope to hell it never needs to be." Across the chamber, advisors whispered, fronds and claws scribbling notes. A few reclassified humans in their risk assessments. Some added a new term to their tactical simulations. Hadley variant. At the close of the hearing, the chairperson, a robotic arbiter forged for impartiality and protocol, looked up. "No violations found. Human tactics remain within bounds of field discretion." The gavel struck. The Taro delegation stormed out. Hadley waited until the door closed, then turned to the room. "Any other species want clarification on how we handle jungle conflicts?" No one spoke. No one moved. As Hadley walked out, Nayem greeted him in the corridor. "Went well?" I explained. She grinned. "They laugh at our rules." "Yeah," he replied, eyes cold, "until they realize our rules are written in ash and aftermath." Taro Command called it Operation Clawfall. It was supposed to be a surgical show of force. Drop an elite strike team into Sector 9 of Elysium 4, sweep the jungle, and extract any lingering human irregulars. What they didn't account for was that Sector 9 was now unofficially renamed by the Ghosts. They called it The Trap. And Mike Hadley, he was already there, waiting. At 0430 hours, the first dropship tore through the Elysium sky, its engines howling like a wounded god. 5 more followed. Inside, Taro Apex troopers grunted, clenched fists, checked weapons, obsidian glaives humming with energy. Their leader, Commander Harvox, had studied humans extensively. "Primitive, adaptable, dangerous in groups," he recited, "but vulnerable when isolated. They rely on tech, pattern, infrastructure." He smiled to his warriors. "We take their jungle from them. They'll crumble." They landed at 0432. By 0435, they'd already lost 2 scouts. "Motion sensors are jammed," a Taro corporal snarled. "Heat readings useless." Their comms were ghosting. Commander Harvox looked around, squinting through the canopy. The jungle was dense, humid, unnaturally still. The wind carried the scent of ash and something else. Meat. He stepped forward and triggered a line snare made of fused jungle vine and repurposed sensor filament. He didn't fall. He just hung there, upside down, staring into the darkness, until Hadley leaned out of the trees. "Welcome to the jungle," Hadley said, casually unsheathing a blade. "We've got fun and games." Harvox roared and slashed, too slow. Hadley vanished. Elsewhere in the thickets, the ghosts moved like rumors. Clay's det charge dropped an entire canopy section onto a cluster of Taro troopers. Finch's modified shotgun, loaded with anti-armor flechettes, tore through 3 more before the 4th could scream. They didn't call themselves Special Forces. They called themselves Prepared, and Elysium was their playground. Commander Harvox managed to regroup with 4 of his soldiers near a fallen tree. They set up a perimeter, glaives out, defensive formation. "Visual on enemy?" he asked. The corporal shook his head, blood leaking from a cracked carapace. "Number just shadows and noise. They're not engaging directly." "Then we advance." He didn't get to finish the order. A sharp, low whistle echoed from the brush. A moment later, a small device, crudely shaped, clearly handmade, landed at their feet. They stared. It beeped once. EMP pulse, flashbang, audio disruptor, pheromone marker. Their armor fried, their HUDs scrambled, their vision blurred, and from behind the wreckage, human silhouettes emerged, not fast, just efficient. The ghosts moved like they'd been here before, because they had. Harvox fired blindly, slashing at shadows. "Cowards!" he shouted. Hadley's voice came from behind him. Number, we just don't like fair fights. 10 minutes later, the jungle was quiet again. The Taro strike force, neutralized, 3 dead, 5 alive, barely. Harvox was pinned to the ground, a boot pressing into his chest plate. Hadley stood over him, helmet off, face smeared with sweat and soil. This wasn't a war, Hadley said, voice calm. This was a reminder. Harvox spat blood. You fight like animals. No, Hadley replied. We fight like the result of 10,000 years of organized chaos. He reached down, shoved a beacon into the mud beside the Taro. It lit up blue, a distress marker. You'll live, but the next squad that comes through this jungle, they won't. He stood and turned to walk away. Behind him, Harvox growled, This violates every convention. Hadley paused, half smiling. Then maybe your conventions need better armor. Back aboard the Formidable, Nayem greeted him at the airlock. Clean sweep. Hadley nodded. Intel. Galactic War Tribunal just logged a formal protest. Again. Hadley exhaled slowly. Good. Nayem arched an eyebrow. You're happy about that? I'm happy they still think they can control how we fight. He looked out at the stars, eyes narrowing. Because humans didn't come out here to play by the galaxy's rules. They came to teach them how they were written. Commander Hadley had been in 23 war zones. That didn't count the political ones. Those were worse. At least in a jungle, the trees didn't send follow-up memos. But now? Now he sat in the most dangerous territory in the galaxy, a strategic policy summit. They called it the Grand Tactical Convergence. He called it a circle of self-important species trying to redesign war to fit a committee's mood board. This council seeks, announced Admiral Serith of the Valari Collective, to standardize acceptable engagement protocols for asymmetric combat. Hadley tilted his head. Asymmetric combat, he repeated. Yes. You mean war. Serith's gills fluttered in irritation. We mean conflict with dissimilar forces where technological parity is not present. Still sounds like war. Around the table, ambassadors and commanders shifted. Some rolled their eyes. Some tried not to look at Hadley directly. They all knew. They'd seen the reports, the footage, the Taro humiliation on Elysium 4, the shattered patrols, the handwritten jungle rules pinned to trees in dried blood, and now they wanted to contain the humans, not with force, with regulations. Admiral Serith gestured to a screen. An animated map projected various simulated encounters. In each one, alien units lost to adaptive human forces. You are unpredictable, Serith said. Unorthodox. Frankly, disruptive to military equilibrium. Hadley smiled. We're not here for equilibrium. A Zelvari general with a polished silver faceplate chimed in. Commander Hadley, we propose limits, restrictions. There must be boundaries, or warfare becomes uncivilized. Hadley stood slowly, walked to the projection, and erased it with a flick of his wrist. You want to know why humans win? Silence. You all train for systems. We train for the collapse of those systems. He pointed at Serith. You teach battle doctrine. We teach improvisation. You expect fallback lines. We plan for no lines at all. He tapped his chest plate. This armor, it's stitched with 10 centuries of failure. Every time we lost, we rewrote the rules. Hadley looked around the room. You didn't evolve in chaos. We did, and we made it a feature. The Traskin delegate, a spiny biped with data cords instead of arms, hissed. And now you teach this to others? Hadley shrugged. They asked. We answered. Indeed, across the galaxy, human trainers were already embedded in military academies, teaching fieldcraft, subterfuge, urban irregular combat. They weren't spreading destruction. They were spreading preparedness, because the next war wouldn't be fought in orbit. It would be fought where rules dissolved, where instinct, grit, and ugly choices lived. Humans didn't fear that place. They trained for it. The council recessed in mutters and panic. Hadley didn't wait. He boarded a shuttle back to the Formidable. Niem met him at the hangar. Well? They want to leash us, he muttered. They always do. But the leash wouldn't hold, because while the galaxy clung to predictability, Earth had always survived by being the exception. Elsewhere, on the scorched border world of Vorax 2, a trap was set. Alien powers had pooled resources to design a battlefield engineered to counter every known human tactic. Artificial jungle, digitally controlled terrain shifts, sensor-deceptive wildlife, even mock human audio signals to confuse response teams. They called it the maze. They were proud of it. They even invited observers. The ghosts landed at midnight. Hadley led the breach. The entire system recorded their every move, ready to prove that the humans could be contained. They were gone in 12 minutes. Every trap flipped, every decoy hijacked, enemy units neutralized, command structure co-opted by Clay using a fake distress signal. The maze didn't trap the ghosts. The maze got mapped, exploited, used, and burned. Afterward, the observers sat in stunned silence as Hadley's post-op footage played back. At the end of the feed, a handwritten sign was left in the control room. It read, "If you want us to play fair, stop designing wars like puzzles." They called it the Sovereign Protocol. It was meant to end the human problem once and for all. A fail-safe directive authorized by 7 allied species. If a human-led force penetrated 3 more strategic sectors, they would be labeled a galactic destabilization vector, which, in bureaucracy speak, meant legal justification for extermination. Commander Hadley read the intercepted report twice, then once more. He handed it to Naem without a word. She read it, eyebrows slowly rising. "Nice to know the galaxy finally agrees we're effective." Hadley said nothing, because buried in the report, beneath its clinical phrasing and legalese, was a truth humans had known forever. You only write rules against the things you can't control. The Formidable rerouted to Tau Spire, a disputed zone where a diplomatic convoy had gone silent. Officially, rescue operation. Unofficially, a test. If humanity stepped into Tau Spire, the Sovereign Protocol would activate. Everyone knew. Hadley went anyway. They dropped into the dust-storm-choked atmosphere of Tau Spire with comms scrambled and sky-wide jamming fields. No GPS, no satlink, just boots, breath, and bad intentions. The ghosts moved without hesitation. 3 hours in, they found the convoy. Burned, ransacked, no survivors. But not by pirates. This was military precision, laser cuts, organized formation spread, controlled detonation patterns. Hadley crouched beside a half-shattered council pod. He lifted a shard of metal, etched in it, the Taro sigil. Not just revenge, proof. They'd done this knowing it would trigger the protocol. They wanted humanity removed from the board. At 2300 hours, the Formidable's radar lit up. 7 fleets, dozens of ships, all armed, all marked with the allied crest of the Sovereign Directive. Admiral Sereth's voice crackled through an open comm. "Commander Hadley, this is not personal, but your presence here constitutes a breach." Hadley tapped the mic. "We just found the convoy, all dead. Taro strike signatures confirmed." Silence. Then, "Unverified. We'll conduct our own investigation after your removal." Hadley stood on the command deck and faced his team. Finch, Clay, Yelani, Niem. Ghosts. Not invincible, not untouchable, just human. Born of a world that taught you to fight with one hand while rebuilding with the other. "Do we run?" Niem asked. Hadley looked at the sea of red blinking lights on the radar. "No." He keyed the comm again, broadcasted wide. "To every fleet listening, you don't have to do this, but if you do, understand this isn't just about us. This is about what comes next. Because we won't die quietly, we won't die politely, we die loud, and we make damn sure you remember why you started writing rules in the first place. You want the full explanation? Here it is." He uploaded a file. It wasn't coordinates, it wasn't blackmail, it was Earth history, war, collapse, famine, riot, rebirth, 10,000 years of brutality and brilliance, tactics born in trenches, cities rebuilt from ash, medicine evolved under bombardment. And in all of it, no pause, no surrender, just rules written from pain and grit. "This is what shaped us," Hadley said. "No doctrine, no manual, just survival refined into instinct." He stepped forward, looking directly into the camera. "We don't follow your rules, because we already survived the ones that tried to kill us, and we made better ones." The fleets didn't fire. Not at first, because in that moment, for the first time, the galaxy understood. Human rules weren't about dominance, they were about endurance. They weren't designed to oppress. They were built to keep going when everything else failed. Some ships broke formation, others held, and one, a Taro dreadnought, launched a salvo. The Formidable took the first strike and lived, because, like Earth, she was ugly, overbuilt, and mad as hell. Hadley turned to Naem. Broadcast full counter-strike options. Which ones? All of them. And that was the last thing the Sovereign Protocol ever saw. Not a plea, not a negotiation, just a species who had been underestimated one time too many, and finally explained why you never laugh at human rules.